Welcome to the Jacob Wayne Show. This is your Jacob Wayne, and with you as usual is my lovely co-host, Kellen Gibbons.
I like your NPR voice.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of energy today. I think I've talked about diverticulitis on the podcast before, and so part of what I'm drinking is this diverticulitis tea. It's meant to calm, soothe, and relieve. And this is my first time drinking it, so I really can't speak for it. But apparently, according to reviews, it's very good for that. It's enjoyed by thousands of people suffering from diverticulitis. I wouldn't say I'm suffering from it. It's just a thing to manage. Yeah. But our loose leaf tea is a mix of the finest blend of organic chamomile flowers, peppermint leaves, marshmallow leaves, and wild yam root.
Huh.
So I have no knowledge of any of that, but essentially been a little bit tighter on the funds lately, and so when I've been trying to eat healthier, you know, like you go to Whole Foods or some shit, and it tends to be a little pricier.
Indeed.
So you start penny pinching. You're like, yeah, I'll eat SpaghettiO and meatballs tonight. A little more processed stuff, and you just start to notice it. And part of it's age, which is a thing we're going to kind of, I guess it's kind of a remove sort of way, be talking about in this episode.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so it's just been this like weird balance. But, you know, when you do research on the internet, you get a lot of conflicting information. So the best you can do is check your sources, as we've always talked about, and, you know, check about 10 or 12 if you can. Obviously, there's a point where maybe you're wasting your time.
Yeah.
But from what it sounds like, alcohol, they used to think affected it, but as more and more research has come out, they're not so sure that's the thing. It's more like highly processed foods, especially grains. Like basically, if you're filling up your colon with a bunch of shit to work on, it's going to have a hard time and react to it. So gotcha. If you can keep things moving, it's all nice and good. I'm sure alcohol isn't always the best approach, but it's also a way to cope rather than going and getting some expensive medication from a doctor or something. So, that being said, I have had 4 shots of tequila, so apologies beforehand. But I think I'm feeling good. It just helps me kind of get out of that hyper focus on, oh, my tummy hurts.
Yeah, for sure.
But I've had those shots, and I'm about to open my beer. So, what are you drinking?
I did it. We were supposed to do it.
Yep.
Oh, Lord.
I'm just drinking a triple berry cheesecake Berliner from WeldWorks.
That's such a good beer.
Yeah. I know I've been very boring lately with my beer choices. It's just like WeldWorks.
No, it's not boring at all. I would do the same thing if I could get it regularly. I just by chance found that beer you're drinking now, and I was just like, oh my God.
We were having a discussion about that. Where did you find it again?
I was in Omaha.
Massachusetts?
Nebraska.
Nebraska.
Yeah.
Then the truth is spreading.
Indeed, the WeldWorks is all across the nation.
Mm-hmm. What are you sipping on?
I have a Melvin Brew. I think I've had a few of theirs before. This is their Imperial Smoked Porter. Velvet Rut. Ooh.
Hell yeah.
And it is
You
quite
got anything
smoky.
to say about it?
It's delicious. It really is really smoky, like very nicely though. So it's a nice dark beer, good smoky flavor. I'm enjoying it. It's got a lot of sweetness because it's Imperial, so it's like 8.5. So yeah, it's tasty. It's expensive,
Hell yeah.
but it is tasty.
Yeah, that is the thing with WeldWorks. They put a lot of good work into it, so they are a little pricier, but I would say it's worth it.
Is it a 4-pack situation?
Yep.
How much is a 4-pack?
A little cheaper at the brewery itself, which we just visited in Greeley, Colorado. But usually about the $16.99 range.
Oh damn! See, this one I think was 18 for the 4-pack. So
Okay.
it gets crazier out this way.
And we have a place called Mulberry Max here in Fort Collins where you can get them for like $3.49 or something as individual cans, which
Ooh.
I would honestly say, unless you really love a flavor, just mixing it together and getting them a little cheaper is a way to go as well.
That's my favorite.
Yep. So, was the one, I think we've talked about this as well, was sponge cookie? Is it sponge?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I believe it's sponge. I think you have to say it like that because it's all caps and has an exclamation point. So you got sponge.
Yeah. And here I was at the Aggie Theater, also here in Fort Collins, watching my buddies in the Woodbelly Band. And a lady came up. I was like, I'll have the, I was like Fruity Pebbles or something like that. And they're like, we're out of it, but we have a sponge cookie. So I always thought it was sponge. But apparently it's sponge.
Yep.
But I didn't see that at the brewery itself. I didn't see I think it's still my reigning favorite, the key lime. But they had, we got flights, which were $12 there, which was awesome.
Oh, nice.
And we got a smoky pineapple.
Ooh.
I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was a smoky pineapple flavor. And so when you mentioned the smoky flavor, I was like, And it's like, immediately when you had it, you're kind of like, that would go really good with pulled pork.
Oh, yeah.
Or something like that. But, so when you get out here in August, we're going to go visit WeldWorks.
Yay.
And we're going to have to chit-chat about it.
Get many beers to try.
Yeah. When I went there, I went up, and it's kind of work you down the line a little bit. You make your order, then you go stand at the end of the bar or something, and they bring them to you.
Uh-huh.
And one of the girls working there was like, so you know how it works here, right? And I was like, no, actually, this is my first time.
Do I weld?
And she's just like, you've been in here before. And I'm like, no, like, not at all. I don't know what you're talking about. And then she's just like, and she pulls somebody over. He's like, doesn't he look familiar? And I'm just sitting there like, well, I got a face like that. What can I say?
Aren't you Randall? You're Randall, right?
But I kind of thought about it for a minute, and I followed the Instagram, and I have posted about it. So perhaps they're fans of the Jacob Wayne Show, and they just didn't put it together.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's what I think.
If you're those beer maidens, write us at Koshka@gmail.com.
Oh, yeah. Right, real slow, though.
Yeah. Put your numbers in there and send us beer. Swag. Koozies.
Give me that sponge cookie.
I need some sponge.
I I need that sponge. Snooky wants sponge. But with that, a segment we started in our last episode, and we did skip a week because I was particularly busy. I can't remember if you were. But yeah, we needed to skip a week. Once again, if you hate that, write us about it at Koshka@gmail.com.
Let's hear it.
But some interesting food things. Did you try any new restaurant, new dish, or try cooking anything a little different?
Oh man, I had a life-changing sandwich, actually. Wasn't me, I didn't cook it. It was this awesome new restaurant in Logan called That Sandwich Place. And they did a Korean fried chicken sandwich. And I still am dreaming about it. Had like a bulgogi, like barbecue sauce, had like crushed peanuts all over the top of it. Some greens. Oh, it was insane.
Is that the revamped spot near Cafe Ibis?
Yeah, it used to be the Italian place.
Okay. Which I loved that place. They used to do a spicy sandwich, and it was so good, but it was maybe just a little too small for the price, at least as a college student. Nowadays, like, if I'm feeling it, I'm feeling it. But
yeah,
what would you say is the difference between the two spots?
Oh man, I think this is just a more like a chef like is more making these sandwiches. It's not just like the ingredients and stuff, it's not just meats and what you can put on them. It's like he has them all planned out and he goes to great lengths to ensure like every ingredient is awesome. He like grows a lot of it himself, and yeah, it's all just so good. Everything, all the recipes are insane. He has some soups every day. He does curry, and it's good stuff.
I gotta give a shout out though. I don't think we've done this yet, at least with this fella. Riley used to work at the Italian place that was there.
Oh yeah,
and I feel like when he was there, the sandwiches went up a notch.
for sure. And he had the spicy Riley, which was like what this guy does to every sandwich. Riley did to the spicy Riley. He concocted all the ingredients he had at hand and was like, "How can I make the tastiest sandwich with all these?" And he did it.
Mm-hmm.
That was a tasty sandwich. That's what I always got whenever I went, even when he wasn't there.
Yeah. So let's diverge a little bit here because this is worth talking about, I think. When it was the Italian place, it would have been the years 2008-ish to 2012-ish, I think, was my college years, and that's really when I was interacting with that spot.
Yeah.
And during the art walks in Logan, Utah, they were always like ready to show my stuff. And so for a good chunk of time there, they would be all about my crazy, wacky, abstract stuff. And they'd be like, yeah, no, it's great. Just show it. And so I had a lot of really good art walk nights. And one of those nights, the Italian place stayed open a little later than they normally did. And Riley was there. And Riley does an amazing impersonation of Tony Clifton.
Oh, yeah.
Which is like the alter ego, perhaps his own man, offshoot of Andy Kaufman. And what he did is he had these painted eggs that he was selling, and he was in just like the section next to me. So I was like selling like robotic frog tree, beautiful surreal, like I don't know, man. And then people would kind of walk by it like, wow, all right, whatever. And they'd get over to his section. He's like, "Oh, you like my eggs? Huh? You son of a bitch."
What do you think of these?
Like, what do you think of my eggs? Huh? And just like, holy shit, like just sitting there after I'm all nervous about presenting my art in such a way, and he's just sitting there like, "Oh, that's a pretty delectable egg right there, I'll tell you what."
Looks good.
And it's like, it was such an awesome booth buddy, for lack of a better term, to have. So,
oh yeah,
this Riley guy, he was also the singer in a band we played some shows with Koshka, Puppy Box.
yeah.
I always would forget the name and accidentally call him Puppy Barn.
Yep.
But which I still just putting those two together is still funny to me, but no disrespect.
Nope.
Just Puppy Box. And it was funny because Koshka, nobody knows, no matter how many times we tell them, means fat cat. So it was kind of fun to play shows together as like cats and dogs.
Yep.
Just kind of going at it. But anyway, shout out to Riley. So obviously, I'm very nostalgic about that restaurant. So when you talk about it as this sandwich place, what is it again?
That
the sandwich barn.
The sandwich barn.
The sandwich barn.
The sandwich
No,
box.
the sandwich box. No, that sandwich place, which is a pretty good name. I ain't gonna lie.
It's a Federal Avenue thing.
Yeah, I would be lying if I said I'm not partially resistant due to nostalgia. But you're saying it's great. And so I need to try it the next time I'm out there.
Indeed.
But I think that kind of highlights our kind of our loosey-goosey subject for this episode. I think we already got a title. It's nostalgia.
There you go.
I've been sitting at home working on shit I normally don't want to work on just to make some money. And it's just been sitting there in a grind, and I have my notebook next to me. And luckily, while I'm doing that, I can just watch some bullshit movies that I've seen 100 times where I don't have to pay attention, or listen to a podcast or whatever. But part of what I did is I threw on some Anthony Bourdain Parts Unknown, and I had seen him before, so I didn't have to like really zone in. Yeah. First of all, what I would say is don't watch those episodes if you're hungry.
Never.
Because holy shit, like just every place they go, like, I want to try that. It's just like, if I was partially full, some of the recipes, I'd be like, yeah, I'm not in the mood for that. Yeah. But if you're hungry, you're like, I want to eat everything that's on the screen.
I'll eat that eye. Bring it on.
Yeah. Like, well, he had a weird funky food one that was a little more odd, and then Parts Unknown is a little more commentary on the countries and places he's visiting while there's food.
Yeah.
And one episode that stuck out before we really get into the depths of this is Trinidad.
Yeah.
And so we're gonna kind of blend the food and music section a little bit. Usually we recommend new stuff that came out. I haven't come across anything new lately, but we'll get into music and we'll get into food because I think it blends on this particular subject. One thing that was interesting, and I was curious if you knew a little more about it, I had hoped to do a little more research, but within that episode, so that's my source, is they got into the history of the steel drum.
Yeah.
And the fact that on the island of Trinidad, they banned skin drums from the local population. And so they started to take the oil drums, since Trinidad has a fair amount of oil, apparently. And it's also a strategic location in the region. And there's just oil drums everywhere. And so the local population started to like turn that into their drums. Yeah. So they had these steel drum gangs that would like kind of beef with each other. It's almost like that what was that Drumline? Yeah, Drumline. That was the movie.
Yeah.
I never watched it, and it's cheesy as fuck, but it's like these different Stomp the Yard, or like You Just Got Served, but it's actual gangs, and there's still drum groups down in Trinidad. And I love that it developed from these oil drums. Like, that's such a, in a way, like, it's maybe not so much anymore, but at the time, that's futurism. That's like some Mad Max shit.
Yeah, it's for real.
We don't have access to our pigskins and whatever else for drum making, so we're just gonna we're gonna turn this into something.
Make a whole new instrument.
Yeah, man. And so Tony got a dish. I think it was maybe after this segment, but There's so much multicultural homogeny there. Like everybody's kind of blended together. Like there's Indians, Africans, all this stuff, and they've all obviously been there for hundreds of years. So inevitably, kind of mixing it up.
Yeah.
And so the food is going to do that as well. And he had this one that was like on some naan bread, and it's curried chickpeas with pepper sauce and mango.
Oh lordy.
Yeah, man. And I'm like, what the? Like, I haven't. That's kind of what I've been all about lately. Is like not the craziest ingredients, but maybe a little crazier on the combinations, at least to my American palate.
Yeah.
And so I'm just sitting here. It's like, man, I want to go to Trinidad. Like, because it's all this steel drum stuff. And so before we move on, I was curious if you, with your musical knowledge, had any info on steel drums or their origin or any thoughts on it, or
Well, it's got a few just thoughts, I guess. Um,
mm-hmm.
Another interesting instrument. I think it's from a different country. I want to say Cuba, but I think I might be totally wrong. But is the cajon, which is just like a box basically, but they like played it on the dockyards. That's what like the workers would play when they had time to hang out. They'd just start drumming on the boxes, and so they started like doing certain things to them to get certain sounds. That's what the cajon came from. So kind of another interesting percussion instrument come out of necessity.
Yeah.
I know the steel drum is kind of like there's. It just depends on who makes it. Like you can get ones that are just like one scale, or you can get these giant ones that have like are chromatic. Basically, every note you can play, and it has like multiple octaves, and it's just made by basically you're just making that little a piece of the metal drum big enough to make that note. So I think there's like math, and they probably have like little pads they pound them, that like are that size. They like hit them with that till it goes in. But man, I
All
can't
right.
imagine how long it takes to make one of those.
I gotta get in there real quick on that. They showed footage of these guys like bending the metal into the steel drums, and they
Oh yeah,
had like a frequency machine, something going on. I'm not totally sure because it was kind of brief, but
yeah,
they're like trying to tune that particular like dip to like a C or whatever.
yeah,
And it was really fascinating. And like that's kind of where it gave me like Mad Max vibes too, because they're like taking an oil drum and just bending it and manipulating it and putting it into this machine to just make a musical instrument.
yeah, dude. It's crazy. The big ones, like they must take them hours and hours. The guy for Jimmy Buffett, the lad from
Mm-hmm.
Trinidad,
Okay.
he shreds that thing, and it is gigantic. I saw him live, and I was just like, that is a crazy instrument. And I just can't imagine how long it would take to get. Because I imagine once you get one in tune, you move on to the next one, and the one you just did is out of tune after you do the next one. I don't know like how many times you have to go back and like kind of retune them.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
No, definitely. So if you have HBO Max, you should watch Anthony Bourdain's Parts Unknown Trinidad episode. Very
Mm-hmm.
cool. I'm not done with the steel drum thing though. I have to recommend before I ask you this question, Bacau Rhythm and Steel Band.
Ooh.
Um, it's just they do covers of like Jay-Z songs or whatever, but just do it with like a fat funk beat, and it's a steel band.
That's
So
awesome.
like, yeah, they do Pimp and Crockett Theme and Jungle Fever. But I used to throw this album on when I was working with kids up in Seattle
Uh huh.
because it had the rhythm, it had propulsion, it had feel good vibes. Um, but it's also like hit songs, so the kids have heard them, but it's like gonna cut out all the questionable language.
Yeah.
And so you're sitting there in the mornings, they're sitting there drawing or building with Legos, you're cooking up some eggs, and you just got the cow, rhythm, and steel band going. And I tell you, man, I went back to it regularly. And, you know, kids
Nice.
like to talk shit on music. They definitely do. And I never heard a peep about it. It's like
That's
if you
always
play like
nice.
some old rock music, they're like, yeah, my dad's music. Like, just like whatever. But with that one, it's just everybody kind of like, okay, okay. Mm. So, Bacao Rhythm and Steel Band. Bacao is BACAO. Rhythm and Steel
Nice.
Band. So, with that being said, I thought of all my friends, you would know this. You know, it's like you're not infallible, but as soon as he's like, "This is the," I think he said something kind of like, "This is the first steel drum," and I was kind of resistant to that when I heard it. I was like, "I love you, Tony, but I don't know. I don't buy it. Like maybe it has a different name or a different context." But I was kind of curious. I wanted to throw that at you. Like, is there another culture, country in human history that has had some form of a steel drum or
I've never seen another one that has so many notes. I've definitely seen there's other steel drums for sure that are way older, but then
but at that point does it just turn into like a xylophone or something? Just like a different material?
well, yeah, that's one thing. And I do think there are just like steel-headed drums. They just didn't like alter them to have different pitches like that particular instrument. So it might be the first of that particular steel drum, which has become to be called the steel drum, even though I'm sure there are other drums made out of steel. But it's taken
Right.
on that name itself. So, you know, it probably
Well,
is that kind of steel drum.
yeah. And I suppose when you get into like the nitpicky things about, well, is this the first thing or is it really just a combination of these two things? You
Yeah.
know, like you start to break music down or even food down like that. You're like, yeah, it's some wheat with some meat and sauce. It's just like, yeah, that's
Yeah.
what you need, but it's something totally different depending on how you make it.
Yep.
And
Indeed.
so, with that, we're still on the Anthony Bourdain stuff. That episode goes into an episode in Portugal, and it's a wonderful episode. If I knew off the top of my head what season it is, but if you're on HBO Max, just go to find Trinidad, and it goes right into Portugal, and you'll know where it is. But
Nice.
with Portugal, I really kind of fell in love with it. Like their whole approach, cultural approach to existence, and they had this concept, which I'm gonna go over real quick, which is similar to the concept of nostalgia, which we're gonna like touch on as we get into different subjects through the rest of this episode. Like this
Hmm.
episode is nostalgia, and so I think anybody listening knows what nostalgia is. It's you know, looking into the past and remembering personal associations, memories, and just having that ache in your heart, like, man, if I could go back to that, or like recreate that feeling again. And it's
Hmm.
like it seems to engage every sensory thing, like smell and touch and sight. Like,
Yep.
and it's really interesting because you know, like so many things can trigger it, like music and weather and once again smells, things like that. But there's this mutation of it that they bring up regularly in the episode of Parts Unknown, which is saudade. And I'll read the definition here. It's a deep emotional state of nostalgic or profound melancholic longing for something or someone that one cares for and or loves. More often, it carries a repressed knowledge that the object of longing might never be had again. It is the recollection of feelings, experiences, places, or events that once brought excitement, pleasure, and well being, which now trigger the senses and make one experience the pain of separation from those joyous sensations. However, it acknowledges that too long for the past would detract from the excitement you feel towards the future. Saudade describes both happy and sad at the same time, which is most closely translated to the English saying bittersweet.
Yeah.
And so in the episode, they're talking about how so much of Portuguese culture, and like that's why it's a term, it's like saudade encompasses all of that. It encompasses nostalgia, bittersweet, maybe I'll never have this again, but I appreciate it anyways. It's a appreciating the now so much, and it's a little more comprehensive than nostalgia. But they thought perhaps that is because the culture was a culture for hundreds of years of navigation and going out to the sea. And so they'd be out for years, and they're like, I might never return. It's basically like, it's the John Denver song, like, leaving on a jet plane, don't know when I'll be
Yeah.
back again. It's kind of great. And so, but they highlight a couple musicians there. And there's this musical genre, fado, or fado, it's F-A-D-O. And I guess it's similar to the word for destiny or fate. It's a music genre that can be traced to the 1820s in Lisbon, Portugal, but probably has much earlier origins. And according to the historian and scholar Rui Vieira Neri, states that the only reliable information on the history of fado was orally transmitted and goes back to the 1820s and 1830s at best. But even that information was frequently modified within the generational transmission process that made it reach us today. So, although the origins are difficult to trace, today fado is commonly regarded as simply a form of song which can be about anything, but mostly follow a certain traditional structure. Fado is a form of music characterized by mournful tunes and lyrics, often about the sea or the life of the poor, and infused with a sentiment of resignation, fate, and melancholy. This is loosely captured by the Portuguese word saudade, or longing, symbolizing a feeling of loss, a permanent, irreparable loss and its consequent lifelong damage. This is similar to the character of several musical genres in Portuguese ex-colonies such as Morna from Cape Verde, which may be historically linked to fado in its earlier form and have retained its rhythmic heritage. The connection to the music of a historic Portuguese urban and maritime proletariat, sailors, bohemians, dock workers, can also be found in Brazilian modinha and Indonesian krongong, although all these music genres subsequently developed their own independent traditions. So, that was a little long-winded, but it really stuck out to me because, nostalgia in music is such a powerful thing to lean into when you're writing songs and doing things like that. I was curious if you were aware of any other genres or styles of music that kind of inherently lean into concepts like that, like saudade or nostalgia.
Yeah, so there's the main guy that comes to mind is Antonio Carlos Jobim, who he's most famous for The Girl from Ipanema, which but all of his songs have certain songs that they always kind of lean that way. They lean into nostalgia. He actually has a song called Chega de Saudade. Which people call No More Blues. Like that's what the English translation is, but if you I put it in the Google Translate and it says enough of missing.
Yeah.
But which kind of works as well. So,
well, it's like I would say saudade. It seems to me like it's like coming to terms with the blues or coming to terms with loss.
Yeah.
And like appreciating, I will never have that again, but I must look to the future. But I will still appreciate its beauty.
Yeah. I don't know. So it is pretty interesting. Like that song, the Chega de Saudade, is like These are terrible Google Translate lyrics, but go my
Mm.
sadness and tell her that without her it can't be. Uh, I'm guessing pray to God that she'll come back. I don't want to suffer anymore. Shega de Sadad. Just that kind of thing. Without her, there is no
Mm-hmm.
peace. There is no beauty. It's just sadness and melancholy
Yeah.
and all this stuff. But if she comes back, what a beautiful thing. What a crazy thing. Because there are fewer little fish swimming in the sea. Ooh. Yeah.
Mm.
And he also has another song that's like my favorite song by him is called Jinji, which is Dindi, but you pronounce that Jinji. And
Mm-hmm.
it sounds like it's about like past love, but it's actually about like his farm, like that he grew up on in Brazil, and so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it goes off. Uh, I love you more each day. Uh, oh Jinji, if I only had words, I would say all the beautiful things that I see when you're with me. So it sounds like it's totally about a person, but it's actually about his like farm and longing to go back there. So yeah, that's definitely another one. Brazilian, probably very similar like rhythms and stuff. But
Similar
guy never has
language,
his own thing.
Portuguese.
Yep. So
We're hoping to get our buddy Michael Neal on here to talk about his experience with Brazil. I think he lived there for part of his life,
yeah, that'd be very
so
interesting.
we could get into that. Before we continue, I have a longing to pee. It's my bad. But is there anything you'd like to talk about with people while I go do that real quick?
I mean, I could keep talking about this, whatever you
Do
want.
whatever you want. This is now the Kellen Gibbons show.
Uh-oh.
Anytime I go pee, you can just put anything in their brains that you want, and I'll come back and I'll try to guess what you talked about.
Okay, it's not gonna be too hard.
Alrighty. I will be right back.
Yeah, but like we were talking about how all these genres kind of are descendants of another genre. Actually, there's Antonio Carlos Jobim was known as the father of the bossa nova, which uh, is a very particular style, similar to the samba, and that all came from another Brazilian style earlier called the choros. I'm probably butchering these pronunciations, but I'm trying. And it's kind of interesting if you keep tracing that choros back and farther and farther, we actually seems like it's descended all from the polka, which is kind of an old joke of a genre, but actually has descended into many other important genres of music. So if you listen to a bossa nova, it doesn't sound anything like a polka, but that's kind of how people just started messing with the polka beat, and that's what came out. So, um, there's awesome recordings of Antonio Carlos Jobim. Let's see. He has the Wave was a big one. Of course, the Girl from Ipanema is his biggest hit. Everybody still plays that one. Some of the most famous singer of his songs was
All right.
Astrud Gilberto.
Astrud Gilberto. We were talking about nostalgia, talking about saudade. Were you talking about 80s music?
That 1960s. You're close.
Oh boy. Well, why don't you? I don't know. Anything you want to fill me in on?
Well, she's the one that her performance of the song "Girl from Ipanema." She's like one of the most famous versions of that song.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. I was just talking a little more about bossa nova.
Hell yeah. Bossa Nova, does it have a particular emotion about it?
Well, I mean,
Like
Carlos
Fado?
Jobim was told, like, that's what he mainly played and wrote. So, bossa nova means different beat, I think, or new beat. Yeah, bossa nova, new beat. So yeah, it's like kind of a jazz samba mix, But a lot of Joe Beam's tunes are considered that, and they all have a lot of that so dad to them.
Hmm.
So
Now the blues. I mean, obviously you're talking about the blues, and it's like I got the blues. How would you differentiate the blues from some of these other genres? Of like, it seems to be aching in a similar way, but I guess the blues doesn't seem as nostalgic.
no, it's kind of just
It's just
putting
like
that.
I'm down in the
It's like
dumps. God damn it!
playing the feeling of it, not
Yeah.
talking about it and talking about what you're bluesed about.
Hmm.
But it is interesting that, yeah, they use the bossa nova and call it no more blues. Even so, they do use that word like somewhat the same. I'm not sure who came up with that translation, if it was actually Joe Beam, but
Hmm.
it's kind of interesting. Like, if that's what he was like, maybe he felt that that better described that word, even though it's so hard to describe without writing a paragraph. Maybe he was like, no, not the blues. It's more like that. I don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe the blues is about the blues being okay. I don't know.
I almost, and I mean, there's experts way more than me that could probably really correct this, but like, to me, it's always seemed like the blues was like, I'm in it, motherfucker. Like, I'm sad. Like, this
Yeah.
is sad shit. And I'm just sad, all right? And then Fado, or maybe this bossa nova is like like coming out of that a little bit, where like I'm still sad, but I've realized what it was and how to appreciate it.
And there's flutes now.
And there's flutes now, and I maybe never would have heard the flutes
Yep.
had I never experienced that blues. So I don't know.
Indeed.
We're coming up on 40 minutes, so we might get to our last sections or not, but well, I guess we'll kind of just feel it out. But thank you for letting me take a pee, by the way.
Yeah.
Good Lord. Yeah.
You need
But
one of them Amazon piss jugs.
yeah, no, I'd rather just feel like a human being.
Well, all right.
I need to wander off and go pee every now and again. You know, not just be a fucking cog. But speaking of cogs and machines and nostalgia and all that, and I did mention it when I came right back, 80s music, man. There's a thing about the
Ooh.
tone and the mixing and just the overall sonic structure of an 80s song. Like the way they played guitar, the way the drums are. The bass was a little more prominent, so I'm bound to be a little more into it. I
Yeah.
get so nostalgic for 80s music, but really my time was the 90s. Now, I've theorized that I'm the youngest in my family, and my siblings are 6 years older, 9 years older, 12 years older. So they were all living the 80s life. And so any music I really encountered tended to be what they had to offer. Like, I'd pick up on a couple things from my mom and dad, but they weren't huge into music, I guess. Well, it's kind of hard to say. They're Mormon. So
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of, shut down a little bit. It's like, you can enjoy this and this, but you can't enjoy that and that. I feel like that's the nicest way you can put it. Whereas my siblings, they're young. They're going to gravitate to whatever's popular and whatever they discover through friends and whatnot. And I like to say that my oldest sister really had her head wrapped around rap and pop music and some piano. And then my brother was more like alternative rock, like Nirvana, Pearl Jam. But then he also liked movie scores and like James Bond themes and things like that. And then my sister, 6 years older, was very much up on like, this is the new hot stuff. Like, this is what's popular right now. So she would probably not like to acknowledge this. Maybe she would these days. I really don't know. That she is the one that introduced me to Korn when I was little.
Oh.
And changed my whole, like, it's like my sister thinks Korn is cool, but Korn they rode that line, man. Back in the day, they were on that TRL show, and
Yeah.
they were like, "You're kind of the bad boys, but you're also accepted for being that."
Yeah.
So that's what I leaned into. I was like, "All right, I'll get the baggy pants, chain wallet,
Hell yeah.
uh, bleach my hair tips," and I'm like, "That's how I can be cool." Like, because I could never do the preppy thing. I just like, I don't know. And I guess that's what's funny is like new metal became preppy. It became like what all the jocks listen to. And so a lot of people
Yeah.
have bad memories of all that stuff, but in a lot of ways, its legacy to me was music fusion. It was mixing funk and rap and metal and rock, and it was really adventurous to me. While maybe
Yeah.
the lyrics were stupid and like the me, like it's just yeah, me. As a teenager, it's really easy to relate to that. But I know I'm getting a little long winded, but as I get older, new metal, I'm like, yeah, I look back on it and I kind of like it. But what I find that I'm really nostalgic for is 80s music. And some of the 80s music that my siblings didn't even listen to.
Interesting.
And then I think about my buddy Steve Cook and his siblings. They listen to stuff like REM and some of these more English bands. And so then I kind of, if I think about it, I realize that some of these things I'm nostalgic for, like Susie and the Banshees and Dead Kennedys and REM, and I'm just thinking about the mystery of that time, like when that music seemed kind of like unusual. Like
Uh-huh.
I'm nostalgic as fuck for pop music that my siblings listen to as well. And I love it, but it's a different kind of nostalgia. That's just like pouring candy down my throat, knowing it's not great for me, but just like,
Yeah.
Skittles. But like the aching, like almost the saudade is like Susie and the Banshees and Bauhaus. And it's kind of this more post-punk goth stuff.
Huh.
Like the Cure, man, the Cure makes me feel such a way. And
Interesting.
I used to hate them. I was like, I'm broken and hurt, and I wrote a song. Like that's basically their lyrics. But as you get older, you're like, oh my
Shit.
god, I'm broken and hurt, and I wrote a song. And then a guitar's like, it's like such a delicate little guitar part. Like it's not hard to play, but it's like exactly what you picture, like a fucking misunderstood teenager like writing at 3 in the morning or something.
Yeah.
And it's like, man. So let me ask you before we continue: is there any old music that makes you more saudade? Maybe
Dude,
not
I
like
don't.
that pure candy nostalgia, like, oh my god, this is just awesome because I loved it. Is there anything that kind of makes you feel sweetly melancholy, like bittersweet?
Yeah, and I don't know why, because I didn't even listen to him that much, but 1979, Smashing Pumpkins. That song just does something. I don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But it totally does
Oh
that
yeah,
exact thing.
yeah. I kind of know the gist of it, so I play it on bass from time to time, like just during warm ups.
Fun little riff.
Yeah, and I remember I sat in a room with somebody and I started just playing that, just kind of I was thinking about something else, and
Uh-huh.
they were like, "Really?" And I was like, "What do you mean, really? Like,
Yeah.
this bugs you? Like, I don't know if we can even jam today."
I don't even want to be friends no more.
Yeah, it's just like Jesus, like I could totally deal with like, Smashing Pumpkins, huh? Yeah, I know. Like, kind of dismissive. Sure, I could do that all day, but like, just like, really? It's like,
Yeah,
well, you can fuck right off.
for shizzle.
Yeah. So, that being said, we're coming up on almost an hour.
Indeed.
Do you want to like kind of just throw one in, or some chat movies, or you want to go the full breadth?
Well, we could do another segment or two. How many movies did you watch?
Well, let's get into chatting movies.
Nice.
Yes. So I watched a ton of movies recently because I haven't been able to do as much painting. Like I think I mentioned earlier, just a lot of random tedious work, sitting at home, throwing on movies, doing this and that. And one thing I did is I burned through the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And it's kind of funny because that whole movie series is starting to have elements of nostalgia about it. You go back to Iron Man from 2008, you're like, oh, holy shit. Yeah, I remember this and that. And oh man, it led to this and it led to that. And, some people really don't like that whole MCU, as they call it. But I think that they really pulled off something kind of spectacular. When you look at the credits and look at how many people worked on each one of these movies, it is almost like a social event that took over a decade to complete. It's like a giant art project, really.
Yeah, for real.
And I'll take an art project over, warfare or exploitation any day. And, some could argue that Disney exploits certain things, but point being is that I wouldn't level that at the directors and actors and artists that worked on these films. And are they high art, for lack of a better term? Are they something that make you think deeply about stuff? No.
Mm-hmm.
It's like stuff you watch with your grandparents and your kids, and you can all watch it together and like, ha, that was a funny line. The raccoon said something silly to the tree man. Like, it's basically modern mythology, and it's something that can bring us all together. And I've actually been impressed by a lot of the things they've injected into it. Like, Doctor Strange is all about psychedelics, and maybe you don't know everything about how the universe works. And you're like, holy shit, this is essentially a kid's movie. But he's asking if there's like LSD or psilocybin in his tea. And then, another one addresses Trump's wall. And it's kind of funny because at the time it was so on the nose, but you could watch it now and maybe not understand that that's what it was talking about.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of, the further away you get from that, you're like, oh, wow, it's just a general statement of like, don't close off your borders. Like, we're all one tribe, we're all one people, let's embrace each other. So there's a lot of good messages in there. Obviously, they screw it up sometimes, but I've really enjoyed the rewatch. That being said, while I'm working on stuff, they get into the vrosh, boom, boom, boom action stuff. Like, oh, well, I just focus on my work. I don't have to pay attention. Like, all that's for kids. Like, I'm just waiting for characters to talk to each other in a room and be intimate. And like, that's what I'm into now. When I was younger, I would have gone crazy for all the bright colors and lasers and all that stuff. And maybe that's part of the blend. But to get back to nostalgia, I watched this trilogy that just came out on Netflix called the Fear Street trilogy, I guess. And it comes in 3 parts. It's like a 3-part movie trilogy, and they released each one week after the other. The first one was Fear Street 1994. The next one was Fear Street 1976. And then the next one was Fear Street 1666. And I was a big fan of the Fear Street books. They were written by R.L. Stine, the guy who did Goosebumps.
Yeah.
And they were for like the older crowd. They were, when you're a teenager, we're going to get a little more violent. There's a little more risk in these books. And it was an important transition because I read, I think, the first 100 Goosebumps books and then got into Fear Street a little bit, but then I quickly went into Stephen King. And that was like the three main things that really got me into reading. And so I'm going into this with nostalgia. I'm like, I remember Fear Street, like, and these are going to be rated R. Like, I didn't expect that. Like, I thought they were going to go safe, like PG-13 or whatever. And there was that Goosebumps movie a little while ago with Jack Black. Like, I didn't even bother. Like,
nope.
How dare you? Like, that is not how you should do Goosebumps movies, but whatever. Maybe some people feel differently. And there will be kids that are nostalgic about that movie.
Weird.
Like, a couple of years from now, which is insane. But anyway, to kind of get to the point of this, they're overly violent. They rip off every horror film I can think of. Like the whole opening sequence, almost the music itself is all ripping off Scream in Fear Street 1994. And just every chance they get, they drop in a pop song from 1994. But it's like the alternative stuff that, you know, oh no, we're cool. Like we're playing Smashing Pumpkins and Garbage and all this stuff that you kind of sort of forgot about, but you're like, yeah. And so
Boys to Men?
There was never a time for Boys to Men. It was all rock stuff because, you know, horror.
Yeah.
But by the end of it, looks like the people in it were having fun and all that. But it was just like over the top. Like it was the first time I watched something that was like, it seemed unnecessarily violent. Like it wasn't creative. It wasn't like, holy shit, this is a fucked up person. It was like, let's put neon lights on this motherfucker, play Nirvana while he stabs the shit out of this teenager. Like it felt kind of gross in a way. And I mean, am I going to protest against it, say they shouldn't make films like that? Absolutely not. Make whatever you want. But like, it was just like, ugh. Like, Scream, the opening scene of that movie is actually really kind of terrifying. And the detachment of this murderer talking about all his movie trivia, and yet he's still going to stab this teenager, was actually scary. Like, it was still, like, kind of referential to old horror and the slasher genre, and it was mocking that, but it was still creepy. And this was just, like, felt like a music video. And it was so exploitative of nostalgia, which is kind of what kickstarted this whole concept for the episode. Like, the next one, they're playing all the hit pop songs from 1976. Like I was saying, the next film doesn't come out for a week, but after I finished that one, I posted, can't wait to see all the pop songs from 1666 in the next one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just like, what are they going to just fucking ham fist into the entire movie from 1666? And be like, oh, yeah, I remember that one. Like, but it's just, of course, the third one, half the movie is 1666, and it's all like dramatic violin. But let's get back to 1994 so we can do an Offspring cut. And as I'm watching it, I'm like, this is nothing like the 90s. They're referencing like Discman and they didn't even wear the same clothes. Like the main characters are lesbians, and hate to say it, but growing up in the 90s is like that was not as accepted as it is in this film.
Yeah.
Like you should address how hard it was to be a gay person in the 90s. Might sound crazy, but it was pretty fucking different. And I don't know, it was so weird because they are trying to basically make a modern statement about cops bad, lesbians good. Let people love who they want to love, and it's actually the cop in town called something something good. Like his last name's Good, but it's spelled Goode.
Yeah.
But he's actually evil. And there's even a
Oh.
scene in the third one where the character goes, "Good is evil." It's just like, fuck you. Like, just holding kids' hands and just like, this was 1994. And by the way, cops bad, lesbians good. It just, of course, cops bad, lesbians good, but don't
Not at the
don't
time.
simplify it like that. Like it's not that cut and dry. There's a whole inner working of systemic issues that lead to bad cops and society's turning against people that are just simply trying to love who they love. And it was kind of infuriating. They were using some of my most nostalgic music to try to like, yeah, isn't this cool? And you're like, no, it's to me it was like whitewashing that shit.
Yeah.
Like not showing how fucking intense it is. And there is a certain point there though where you are like, am I just being that old guy? And like this is for kids. It's like to simplify all this stuff down so they think about it. So then they do move on to books and movies and literature, poetry, whatever that gets deeper on the subject. Like
True.
you don't want to gatekeep that shit. Like
Yeah.
it's like no, Fear Street can be turned into this, and it can be something totally different for kids coming up. And I consistently thought that like a 13-year-old me, 14-year-old me, if that had come out, I would have been like, oh my god, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. It gets into is nostalgia a thing that can be like weaponized through art and culture in the sense where it placates people, or is it more of a matter of I suppose we're just getting older and we're getting crabbier about new shit. I think that leads into our philosophy section, so let that be the philosophy question. Is nostalgia something that should be embraced or cautiously used or not at all? Philosophy.
Quite. Preposterous. Haberdashery. Yes.
I dare say. Do tell.
Yes.
Quite. Think deeps.
We're gonna find out when that movie comes out. We'll see if any old dudes are like, "That's not how it was in 1666." I remember.
Yep. I was
Jean-Baptiste
there.
Lully released his famous opera. You know, we'll
Mhm.
see. Though it's actually interesting. I mentioned this to my girlfriend who is studying English rhetoric, and she
Mhm.
actually, somebody she knows, think is going to school with now, actually, is, they're specializing in nostalgia, like as a using it like that, and
Mm.
I think it can be used like bad. I think that's basically what like the Republican Party kind of preys on in a bad way. Like
Make
we want to get it
America
back.
great again.
Yeah, we want to get back to the good old days, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I
Well,
think it's can be used as a weapon or however you want to phrase that. But yeah, totally. And I think it is. And I don't know if it's like It's just it's just preying on emotions, and that's a easy one to get on. You know,
Because it's so powerful.
for sure.
It's just like, I suppose when you break it down like that, it's like love, anger, fear, they can all be preyed on.
Yeah,
So nostalgia is just another tool in a way. But does it make it inherently bad? I don't think so. But that actually makes me think of something where Facebook, I've been unfollowing a bunch of people that are, their whole life is politics and whatnot.
yeah,
And been following a bunch of stuff I'm into, which tends to be directors or actors or actresses, and 80s nostalgia, 70s. Like, because a lot of what that is for me is I just want to like try to discover the stuff that I never heard about. Like, what was the 80s movie that's very 80s that I never saw?
uh huh,
And in that way, it's not entirely nostalgia. It's like looking almost for a genre of something, and but it's still new. Like, I'm sure you probably have a similar experience where you're like stumble upon a record and you're like, this is so 70s, but I've never heard this.
yeah,
And it's new, but it has flavors of the familiar.
yeah, for sure. Everybody's doing that now, especially like
Oh yeah.
that era is really making a comeback in modern music. It's kind of interesting.
Well, and I'm already sick of it. There's a lot of bands around here that are psychedelic rock,
Oh
and
yeah,
they're all kind of trying to rip off the Beatles slash Pink Floyd slash that 70s sound, and you're like, you're all doing it now though.
man, it's already been done.
I'm
Time
like,
for
damn
new.
it. And so one of the pages I followed on Facebook was I miss the 80s. And I was like, all
Ooh,
right. You see a bunch of old 80s ads and old 80s toys and stuff that they post about. And you're like, that's pretty, yeah, cool, interesting. I kind of remember that, or I don't remember that at all. But over the last month or so, it just turned into fucking Trump tards.
oh yeah,
Like, just like, I wish we could just go back to when everything was perfect, like the 80s.
good times in the '80s.
And you're just like, the 80s were awesome, but hold the fuck on. It was also one of the most racist, homophobic, money driven, like exploitative decades of human history.
Yeah,
It's like,
that sounds
not all of it's
wonderful.
perfect. That's kind of what's the nostalgia of it, is like there was such a contrast of crazy things going on. There was futurism and this bleak post-punk stuff, but then also like Reagan and crazy colors and spray
Yeah,
paint, like hairspray that just made your hair ridiculous.
indeed,
And it's just like, it was such a weird moment in human history. Like, that's what I get nostalgic for, is like, not that I want to go back to it, but just like, what would that be like? And like, kind of trying to remember moments as a kid, like just getting a taste of it.
yeah,
Like, that's the stuff I'm like, man, like that was so weird. But
indeed,
at my core, I'm always a futurist. I'm like, let's take what we got and try to improve it. And it's the future. Future, future,
indeed.
future. We're going for Star Trek.
Let's
We
bring it
ain't trying to
on.
we ain't trying to go back to anything.
Let me get that hollow deck.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like, you go back to some 80s stuff, you're like, maybe we could work on the hoverboard. That was a good 80s idea. Or the like
Yeah,
riding around on a bike with some walkie-talkies with your friends. Like, try to bring that back a little bit, but
yeah.
not that homophobic racist bullshit.
That's the part I like the most.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, I don't know, man. It's just, nostalgia is such a interesting thing where I guess you really did put it, the way I was thinking about it is that it gets weaponized to try to go back to times that none of us want to go back to. But maybe because some people are stuck in a shitty pocket of their life, they're like, well, man, if it was just 1983 again, everything would be perfect. Like, no, it wouldn't. It would
Yeah.
just be you in this hole now, but it's 1983, and your gay friend is getting oppressed, or your black friend's getting oppressed, or whatever.
Yeah. They're getting
Yeah.
slightly less oppressed now, so it's good.
But Saudade, Fatou, absolutely lean into nostalgia with your music.
Yeah.
I'm pretty much almost always for it, unless it's just like a blatant like rip off. Like who was that one band that rips off Led Zeppelin?
I'm not.
Shocky would know because he hates him.
Like the younger kids.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember their name, but yeah.
Here, we're gonna run an experiment right here.
See if you can find them in Google.
Google, who is that Led Zeppelin ripoff band?
Let's see.
And it's the first thing. Greta Van Fleet.
Yep. I remember now.
Yeah, but obviously the first article is Greta Van Fleet hits back at bullshit Led Zeppelin ripoff claims. But do you remember that meme I sent you where it was the cow and then there's a baby cow sucking on the teat and another babier cow sucking on that one's teat?
Yeah.
And the big cow is American blues music. And Led Zeppelin's just sucking off that thing's teat. And then Greta Van Fleet's sucking off that thing's teat.
Exactly. Led Zeppelin ripped off a bunch of their stuff. And
Yeah.
the people they got it from, they probably ripped it off somebody. And then it gets out to where we have recorded history. So,
yeah,
the proof isn't very easy to find, but it's insane.
It's in the pudding, but that pudding's old as fuck.
And you have to like go to classical music concerts. Go hear some Shostakovich thing and tell me that metal bands aren't ripping off something. I guarantee you there's some riffs being stolen from Shostakovich. You know, just it keeps going back.
Mm-hmm. So I think that there is something there in that nostalgia. It's inevitable that we will pull from stuff that has already happened. You might come up with a new twist or a weird new combination, but like to think that you're a wholly original artist or actor, musician, human being even, you're like, no, you're influenced by just an overwhelming amount of pre-existing human history.
Yeah.
And it's all a matter of how you take these things that are already there and kind of sort of make it your own. And I think as long as you feel it honestly, most people are down. If you try to pretend like, no, I'm the one that came up with this or something, then people are like, really?
Nah.
Yeah, well, I don't know. But
Indeed.
yeah, it is interesting. I think we should wrap it up there. That's like
That sounds good to me.
It's a very solid one subject episode, I think.
Yeah. You could tell us what makes you feel nostalgic. We'll read your listener emails.
Do you feel nostalgic for our old segments? Let us know.
Yeah.
We'll bring them back hardcore. We'll even do them twice in a row. Don't even have the olfactory period.
Oh, man. How could he even get by? We'll just play Dear
Blue
Jacob
Chew.
Wayne 3 times
Not our sponsor yet, but Blue Chew.
Oh. The goods.
Oh, my. That's a subject for some other time.
Oh,
and
boy.
feel free to write us at fuckkoshka@gmail.com. Is Blue Chew dishonest to you, ladies? Or should every guy keep a little bit of Blue Chew just ready for one of those nights where it's like, let's get to it.
Let's get it on.
Yeah, like, because let's be honest, you get out of your 20s, Blue Chew can really help out. They have not sponsored us yet. I want their sponsorship because I want a free sample.
Is it a
But
Pokemon?
Well, it's like that. Viagra stuff. But like,
Lemonade.
You just go to their website and they send it to you, and you can kind of go for a while. What's that line from Walk Hard? If your erection lasts longer than 8 hours, call more ladies. No, but there's also another funny bit in the movie, This Is 40, where it opens up with Paul Rudd having sex with his wife in the shower. And they're like, oh, this is amazing. This is incredible. Wow. And then it gets exposed that he took a Blue Chew or something like that. Oh. And she's like, what the fuck? Like, and he's like, what? I thought like, it's my birthday. Like, or like her birthday. No, yeah, it is her birthday. It's just like, I wanted to like, just rock it out for you. And she's just like, you should be able to rock it out without that.
Oh,
and boy. It's just like, never really considered that. I just like, obviously you can't do it all the time. But, special occasion. Christmas Eve. Have the Blue Chew on the side. So,
there you go.
If any of you, maybe we should wrap up these episodes like this. We've already named the episode. It's nostalgia, so we've already taken care of that. But another thing is, we'll just leave them with the thought and write us, and we'll talk about it in the next episode.
Bam.
So, yeah, Blue Chew. Should every guy just have it ready to go? Should he have it in his bat utility belt? Ready to go.
Yeah. Did you watch Blues Chews as a child? Oh, wait. That's different.
We're getting hard with Blue Chew. We're getting hard with Blue Chew. We're getting hard with Blue Chew. I wonder what holes next.
How long will it last?
8 hours.
Whew. Come on,
alrighty.
Ladies.
With that, what episode is this? Is this 40?
The big 40?
Yeah. I also got a webcam, so we might be figuring out that soon. But we'll let you know.
Oh, boy.
With that, it's been wonderful chit-chatting with you, Kelly Gibbs.
Indeed. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to The Jacob Wayne Show. If you would like to contact us, please write us at fakoshka@gmail.com. That is FAKOSHKA@gmail.com. You can find us on Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube. Simply search The Jacob Wayne Show and it should pop right up. Make sure you like and subscribe and leave a review and share this podcast with your friends. Please write us. It helps add content to the show and makes the show even better for you, the listener. Thanks for tuning in. Welcome to the